I just woke up to a very hurtful experience this morning that I'm going to share with you because I think some of you may be having similar kinds of stories, situations, and it's all about how we need to heal. My story is I woke up and there was a post on Facebook, a reply to something that I had written, from my long-lost cousin, who I had no idea really cared that much about politics to begin with, no less to know which political party she supported. And she was angry at me, really lashed out, because she had read things in the past or heard things that I had said supporting Trump, and she was angry. She talked about how could and she really got personal. She talked about how could I be for a president who said all these hateful things about women, and I have a daughter, and do I want my daughter to grow up under that kind of a country? She said, what about, he's against immigrants, and our grandparents were immigrants, and she just brought out all kinds of family stuff on Facebook, which is great, and really was baiting me. Well, Trump won. I am no longer going to be defending Trump. I mean, I voted for Trump, or explaining why you should vote for Trump. I voted for Trump because the thing that I cared about most was who was going to protect this country best against terrorists. And I've been studying this for years, ever since 9/11. I've written 2 books about this. And in my opinion, from all my experience in regard to terrorism, I believed and I believe that Trump will. But I'm not going to get into any arguments with people about, there's no point at this point. So, there is this kind of thing. I hope you're not waking up to these kinds of things on Facebook against you, whoever you voted for. But we need to be nicer to each other because ISIS is dancing in the streets. I don't know if you are aware of this yet, but they are thrilled that we are fighting against each other. Because while we are fighting against each other, we are more vulnerable to terrorism. We're not going to be paying attention to terrorists. We're going to be still backbiting, protesting in the street, and doing all these kinds of things, hurting each other, making each other weaker psychologically to be able to deal with terrorism. Now, it's important to understand where all of this came from, besides the specific ideologies and things that the candidates said and so on during their campaign. But you have to understand that to some degree we have been manipulated by the media. We've been manipulated, for one thing, to expect a Hillary Clinton win. All the polls, 99% of the polls, pretty much throughout the election, have shown that Hillary was going to win. So it's been a shock. I was shocked. I was driving to my friend's house where we were all going to be watching the election, and on the radio on the way there it was pretty even, and I was thinking, okay, that's interesting. And by the time I got to her house, we already started seeing where the election was going, and I was shocked. I think Trump was shocked. He woke up the next morning and said, "Wow, I'm president." So we've been lulled to believe, for those of you who wanted Hillary to win, you've been lulled to believe that was going to happen. Now, part of that is because of a psychological phenomenon where people give what's socially acceptable answers to polls. So when people were asked in these polls, who are you going to vote for? Even if they were planning on voting for Trump, they said Hillary because they knew that was the more socially acceptable answer. So that's why this was a shock. Another reason why it was a shock was because, in fact, Hillary did win the popular vote, but it was because of the Electoral College and how that works that Trump wound up winning. It was just like what happened with Gore and Lieberman some years ago, when we were going through those hanging chads. At least the hanging chads gave us time to sort of calm down while that was still in the balance. But I voted for Gore and Lieberman. I wanted a Lieberman in the White House, so I was disappointed and angry, and I felt, I kept wanting them to recount and so on, so I get it. But the election is over. It's time for us to all come together. You know, President Obama pretty quickly, I got to give him credit for that, pretty quickly invited Trump to the White House. And Hillary gave a really nice concession speech. And Trump even gave an acceptance speech in which he was very gracious to Hillary. So if they're all getting along, you know, even though they're through gritted teeth perhaps, but they are making an effort to get along for the good of the country. And that's what we need to do.